Hi all, I'm Courtney and I'll be presenting on how to facilitate experiential acceptance from an ACT perspective. So to do this, I want to start with some clarity on what we advocate to accept in ACT. So we want to accept our private experiences. These can be our thoughts, our feelings, and our memories. Why do we want to accept these? When we open up to unwanted experiences, so even unwanted feelings, unwanted thoughts, it allows us to act on our values. And when we don't open up to these experiences, we may engage in self-defeating behaviors, such as drinking, ruminating, and worrying. And that is cued by this avoidance of these experiences, of not wanting to feel these things or think these things. So we engage in these behaviors that ultimately don't lead us closer to our goals or in the direction of our values. So it's important that we are not advocating to accept every thought and every feeling. Instead, we're advocating for accepting these thoughts, these feelings, these memories, if it's getting in the way of values-based living. To illustrate this point, I'm going to be using an example of a 25-year-old female who presented with relationship concerns. And she said, "My relationship makes me feel like I'm not good enough, but it's fine as long as I keep busy and I just don't think about it." So let's look at these red areas. Here we can see that the client is not making room for her feelings, and instead she's doing things that are ultimately self-defeating, like keeping overly busy in order to avoid her emotions and planning on not thinking about the issue, which we know unfortunately usually doesn't work. And so that can lead to a lot of rumination or worrying. So this client here is really struggling to figure out creative ways of how to not experience this feeling of not being good enough. And this struggle itself is taking up a lot of time and energy. So she's keeping busy all the time. She's spending plenty of time trying to not think about it. And so what we want to do in this exercise is have her tap in to this feeling of not being good enough. We want her to explore and make room for this experience. So that way she can drop the struggle with it and she can create space for this feeling in herself and in her life, which will free her up to act in ways that are more congruent with her values than keeping busy and trying not to think about things. So to do this, we're going to use an acceptance of emotions exercise. And in this exercise, I'm going to ask my client to notice that feeling of not being good enough, to put a name to maybe what's contributing underneath that statement, to breathe into it, even to expand around it, and to just allow it to be there. I'm going to ask her to be self-compassionate towards the feeling and to get a physical sense of the feeling. And then to expand her awareness of the feeling and how it relates to herself and her world. So I'm now going to go through the exercise. I challenge you to engage in the exercise in a way that's semi-immersive. So I'll be talking to you as if you are the client, but please keep your eyes open and imagine the experience as if you were the client who is engaging in experiential avoidance surrounding her relationship. And this exercise might be a little bit sped up in comparison to what you would want to do in real time with the client. So you would begin after your client says the statement about not feeling good enough, and you would ask her if she's willing to pause and to dive into that experience with you. So then I would say, I invite you to sit upright in your chair with your back straight and your feet flat on the floor. Either close your eyes or fix them on a spot, whichever you prefer. Now quickly scan your body from head to toe, starting at your scalp and moving downward. Zoom in on the part of your body where you're feeling this feeling most intensely. Observe this feeling closely. Notice where it starts and stops, and learn as much about it as you can. Notice what shape it has. Notice the temperature of this experience. Now I want you to try to put a name on it. What is this experience? In this example, the client notices that she is experiencing loneliness when she is feeling not good enough for her partner. I want you to breathe into this emotion. Imagine your breath flowing into and around it. As you're breathing into it, as if in some magical way, all this space opens up inside of you. You open up around this feeling and you make space for it. I want you to expand around it. You can do this in whatever way makes sense to you. Breathing into it and opening up around it. And see if you can just allow this feeling to be there. You don't have to like it or to want it. Just let it be. Observe it. Breathe into it, open around it, and allow it to be as it is. Don't try to get rid of it or alter it. If it changes by itself, that's okay. If it doesn't change, that's okay too. Changing or getting rid of it is not the goal. Your aim is to simply allow it, to simply let it be. Now I want you to imagine this feeling as an object. As an object, what shape does it have? What color is it? Is it transparent or opaque? Would it feel rough or would it feel smooth? Are its edges soft or hard? You don't have to like it or to want it. Just allow it and notice that you are bigger than this object. Notice that this feeling tells you some valuable information. It tells you that you are a human being with a heart, and it tells you that you care. It tells you that there are things in your life that matter to you, and that there's a gap between what you want and what you've got. The bigger the gap, the bigger the feeling. Now I want you to take one of your hands and place it on this part of your body. Imagine that this is a healing hand, a hand of a loving friend, parent, or nurse, and feel the warmth flowing from your hand into your body. Not to get rid of it, but to make room for it. Hold it gently, as if it is a crying baby or a frightened puppy. Soften up around it. As you let your hand fall, once again, breathe into it and expand around it. Life is like a stage show. On that stage are your thoughts and your feelings and everything that you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. For the last few minutes, we've dimmed the lights on the stage and we've shined a spotlight on this feeling. And now it's time to bring up the rest of the lights. So bring up the lights on in your body. Notice your arms, your legs, your head, and your neck. And bring the lights up in the room around you. Open your eyes, look around, and notice what you can see. Notice that there's not just a feeling here. There's a feeling inside a body, inside a room, inside a world full of opportunity. And welcome back into the room. So from that point, I would unpack this exercise with my client. I would start by asking broad questions like, what was that like for you? Do you notice any difference? And then I would maybe include some more leading questions, like saying, do you have more self-control over your actions now? Or something that was congruent with what led us to that exercise. So some takeaways I want to highlight from this is going back to our example. So throughout this exercise, our client was able to acknowledge that the statement of I'm not good enough was actually the statement that underlying had an experience of loneliness with it. And then by using acceptance, this particular client might be able to shift from all the energy that she's placing in keeping busy and trying not to think about her own loneliness and her own experience in her relationship. So by shifting towards acceptance, she might have more space and more time to act on her values. And so in this particular example, perhaps this client really values intimacy and is not able to have intimate conversations with her partner or intimate content with her, or intimate contact with her partner. So she might feel a little bit lonely. And so by making space for this experience, she's able to think of some values-based committed actions to then address with her partner. And so that's why we would do this exercise. So after the exercise, her feelings will either change or they won't, and it doesn't matter either way. The aim is not to change or reduce the feelings, but to accept them, to acknowledge them, and to allow them. So therefore, when we aren't investing so much time, energy, and effort trying to control how we feel, she can invest it in acting towards her values. So that is her committed action to having a conversation with her partner about intimacy and how that's a need that's not being met for her. So in conclusion, I just want to hit a couple things home. That acceptance is not all or nothing. It is a process and it will continue. Acceptance is actively making room for experiences, and this does not mean that we like them. We simply allow them to be there. And acceptance of our private experiences allows us to act in ways that are congruent with our values. That is all I have. Thank you so much.